A special episode this week as we talk with Elder Bradford C. Newton, the new president of the Pacific Union Conference, about his vision for Adventist mission and ministry in the Pacific Southwest. On October 24, the Arizona Conference held their constituency session. Elder Ed Keyes has been re-elected as president, a position to which he was elected in 2017. Elder Jorge A. Ramirez has been re-elected as executive secretary, and Elder Reggie Leach has been re-elected as treasurer. Also in the news, on October 18, the Nevada-Utah Conference voted to elect Elder Carlos A. Camacho as the conference's new president, effective immediately. Elder Camacho has been serving as conference executive secretary. He has also served as a pastor in Southeastern California Conference, in the publishing ministry as a department director at Pacific Press Publishing Association, and as executive secretary in the Nevada-Utah Conference since 2014. Elder Camacho replaces Elder Leon B. Brown Sr., who was elected vice president of the Pacific Union at the constituency session in August. The work of the church in the Pacific Southwest of the United States is strengthened and blessed by the leadership in all of our conferences. Links to both of these stories are in our bulletin. As it happens, there's another Nevada-Utah Conference alumnus on our Pacific Union leadership team, and that's Elder Bradford C. Newton, who served as president of the Nevada-Utah Conference before coming to the Pacific Union in March of 2008 to serve as the executive secretary. Elder Newton was elected president of the Pacific Union in August 2021 at the Union constituency meeting in Tucson, Arizona. I was delighted to speak with him about his new responsibilities and his vision for mission effectiveness as he has embraced his new duties as president of the Pacific Union Conference. Elder Newton, it's so good to have you with us on All God's People. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Connie, it's really nice to be with you.
Well, you have been in the new job, president of the Pacific Union Conference, for about 2.5 months. Tell me, what have you learned so far?
Well, that's a great question. And you know, what I begin with is saying you know all the things you don't know when you step into a new role like this. And as I've been thinking about how I started this first few months, it has been primarily focused on the selection and election of 3 new conference presidents. That's an amazing challenge and opportunity, but what has been fantastic is that it's placed me in the presence of these wonderful people. The nominating committee process and the presidential selection process for Southeastern and for Nevada-Utah and for the Arizona conferences have all been a way that I've really perceived the working of God through individuals. You know, we start each meeting and we continue to pray through these meetings for God's leading, for His guidance. There'd be moments where we decide that we need to stop and pray about a particular problem or question that we're having a hard time kind of getting through. And every single time I've seen God open the door in a way that really none of us expected in terms of process or a particular question that was being grappled with. So for me, these presidential selection processes have really been faith-affirming. They've been faith-affirming because, first of all, it reminds me that I'm really glad for the process that we use as Seventh-day Adventists. I'm thankful for the way that we decide that one person doesn't get to decide who leads, but it's a group of people that emerge from God's people and they come together and spiritually make that decision. And I think the second thing has been just to see the hand of God at work. So when I leave these meetings, I'm actually kind of pumped up, actually, Connie. I'm really excited to see what God has done. And I'm really thankful for the leadership that's come from these committees and these meetings, constituency and executive committees that have made the decisions. Because when you look at who's come, many of these are historic elections. They are people that have come from an experience and a background in the Seventh-day Adventist Church that is unique. And they're going to be joining us in the conversation of how we continue to do the work of God in His kingdom in the Pacific Union.
Well, tell me, what are your convictions for the future? We are still kind of in the pandemic times. We have a lot of stuff going on in the world and the church. What do you feel about the future of the Pacific Union Conference?
Well, first of all, Connie, I am beyond just hopeful. I'm optimistic because I know who leads this church. I know that Jesus is in charge. He is the great shepherd. I'll admit to you that the burden at times I feel as the president is one in which I know that God has called me, as He's called so many others in our church, to be pastors and shepherds of His people, which means that, my deepest conviction is that we need to be loving one another. And through that love, we need to find ways to serve one another and serve our community, and then also to provide leadership. I think a lot of people today in our world are looking for leadership, but not the kind of leadership that's kind of doctrinaire or authoritarian. But I think people are looking for an authentic kind of leadership that's rooted in scriptural and biblical convictions. And, Connie, the Seventh-day Adventist Church, our message, our convictions from Scripture, which each one, I believe so deeply, is relevant to today. And I think that's going to be our real task. I've sometimes called it, you've heard me say this elsewhere, Connie, I talk about it as our 5-year mission, which refers to our constituency, our quinquennial time. But our 5-year mission to explore how we are going to have God use all of us together to help us love, to serve, to lead in our sphere of influence. And I'm excited about that collaboration that we're going to be doing with our conferences, churches, schools, higher education, and healthcare.
Well, Elder Newton, we are excited too. And I'm so glad you joined us today, and we'll look forward to talking to you again on All God's People. Thank you.
Thank you, Connie. God bless you and the ministry you're doing here with All God's People.
Thank you. The leadership of our union is so important to our church. In talking with Elder Newton, I was reminded again of the words of Micah 6:8, which calls on us to do justly and to love mercy and to walk humbly with our God. May this be our prayer today and every day. Thanks so much for joining us today. We'll be back again next week. For All God's People, I'm Connie Jeffrey.